Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to the shop today. I thought I would give a live podcast an attempt and see how this is working. Now, you shut that off. How are we all doing tonight? Basically, I want to talk about a few things tonight, and just thought I'd have a real light podcast. Go over some wild stuff that I was thinking about this week and a couple of things. One thing, I was watching Sean Ryan's podcast on uh, uh, I can't even remember. Holy cow. Uh, the Canadian Sniper podcast. And I just really enjoy Sean Ryan's podcasts. And so it gave me a couple of ideas, but I wanted to throw that out there if none of you have ever seen Sean Ryan's podcast. It's pretty amazing. But let's go about a few things in the world today. One thing that is I'll be damned. I've got no audio. So,
Be damned. I've got no audio.
oh,
So damned.
well, looks like maybe I do have audio. So, let's give that a better shot, shall we? So, in the news this week, aliens. Everybody on Capitol Hill has been talking about aliens. And that is something that I find very fascinating. First off, I'm interested in aliens just because it's a fascinating topic that I think really it is hard to imagine that there is not life, intelligent life, basic life, whatever the life may be out in the universe. And I think that is amazingly interesting that it's getting some type of attention, but really I have to come back to the idea that is this just a giant wag the dog? Because with all of the explosive news that's been coming out over quite a while, it really makes me wonder exactly why is now the time for uh, aliens? Why are we now having uh, congressional hearings on aliens, people talking about aliens, stuff like that? It really makes me wonder exactly what are they trying to obscure from the normal regular news that uh, isn't now in the forefront. So when it comes to aliens, I really like the topic. I don't like how media portrays the topic. I think media is sensationally terrible at their job of reporting on things like aliens. Everybody needs the sensational. If it bleeds, it leads. Um, we need alien abductions. We need animal mutilations. We need probing of different types. But it never gets the serious discussion that it really deserves. And when you break through some of the uh, if you break through some of the really hard um, garbage out there, there's really actually some interesting information. Um, I don't know if we actually saw any of the interesting information in any of the congressional hearings or on any of the news broadcasts. They used language, and from everybody I listened to, it goes both ways, whether it was really convincing because of the language they used or that it was really not convincing because it was very vague. And I kind of come down on the vague side. Yeah, they were using the right buzz terms. Nobody was talking about the general pop culture alien stuff, but they were very serious. They were using all the correct scientific monikers to describe their encounters and what they've heard. Nobody really had any new groundbreaking stuff. And I'm sorry, when you talk about non human biologics, there's plenty of biologics that are not human on our own planet. Um, there's just it left a lot more questions about um, the actuality of what was going on, and it really seemed like a giant waste of time. But while I am interested in the topic, my interest comes from something that happened to me back in 2003. It was the summer of 2003. I was not abducted by aliens. Did not see any aliens, did not see any UFOs, but I had something very weird happen to me. Um, it was about 11:30 at night on a Sunday night. I was driving to work in the summertime. I was on a highway. If you're familiar with the Denver metro area, I was on C470, driving up the Front Range along the foothills. So the highway is kind of down in a valley. There's two big hills. They kind of obscure the highway. The highway's set low. There's pretty good sized hills on both sides. As you pass Morrison, and you're coming up towards I-70, and I'm the only car on the highway. And it's not weird at 11:30 at night on a Sunday night. It's not at all weird whatsoever to be the only car on the highway. It actually happens quite a bit. But while I'm driving to work, um, there was a flash of light, and this was not like a helicopter. It was not a ghetto bird. It was not a spotlight. This literally lit the valley up like daylight, and I remember it vividly. It lit the valley up. You could see every aspect of the valley. You could see all over the valley. It was very amazing. But while I don't discount what your eyes and your brain can do, I do try to um, remember very specifics of it. And one specific thing I very much remember, my daylights shut off on my truck. So if you're familiar with GM product trucks, when there's daylight, there's an audible click in your dash, all your lights change. So you have bright lights all throughout the dash during the daytime, and at night it dims them very, very low, and there's an audible click when it happens. Now, I remember this flash was probably in the range of 3 to 5 seconds of absolute daylight in the middle of the night. Now, I've never heard of anything like this. I remember my lights audibly clicking to daylight mode, and I did not see anything. What I did, in fact, witness was you could see the entire valley. It was lit up, and I drive this highway all the time. It is a very, very common drive it all the time. And you could see literally like it was daylight, and then it flashed off. Now, is that a UFO? I have no idea. No, no clue whatsoever. But I've been around helicopters, I've been around spotlights. They're not as uh, amazing as some people would imagine. Spotlights are actually kind of crappy, but they do the job. But this was not any type of spotlight. This was not any type of anything I've ever seen or encountered before in my life, and it just left me questioning what in the heck could that be. And every now and again, when it pops into my head, you know, it could have been this, it could have been that. I really honestly don't have any idea what it could have been, but no idea. There was never any news reports of it. There was never any anything. Uh, I don't know if anybody else witnessed it. I can't imagine that I was the only one that witnessed it. It was absolutely amazing to witness. But I've always kind of kept my mind open as to the possibilities of what it could be, but way beyond anything I could imagine what it could be. So that's an experience I had. I wasn't abducted by aliens. I actually had enough mental faculties that late at night because I was traveling to work. I'd just woken up. I had enough mental faculties to check the time, not only on my truck, my phone, everything. There was no lost time like some people imagine. There was no really nothing that was any type of adverse effect, and I thought that was just another point because it's kind of an interesting event, but beyond that, I really have no idea what it could have been. So it's always been something in the back of my mind, and of course, I'm always interested in things that are different, things that are not easily explained, things that are um, otherworldly. Um, i- there is uh, there has to be um, aliens out there. Period. The end. There's no chance in a universe this big that there is not some type of intelligent um, entity out there. So that's uh, that's just something that happened to me. That's just something that I find interesting. I found the U.S. Navy reports of the craft off of, I believe it was off of San Diego. I found that really interesting. I did serve in the Navy. I served on a guided missile destroyer out of Norfolk, Virginia. I was a damage controlman, firefighter by trade. Um, had a lot of fun, went all over the world, saw all kinds of things, and interestingly, I did very little. Um, I have immense respect for military services. I have immense respect for on the ground soldiers, but I don't even put myself in that category because there's a big difference between, especially the people I know that served in Afghanistan and Iraq. There's a very big difference between what they did and the sacrifices they made and what I did. And I have immense respect for the ground troops and our military and the amazing things that they did, the terrible things they went through, and really how our government treats them, which is an absolute utter disgrace. Um, I just it is what it is. There's no sense in crying over spilled milk. We're either gonna do something as a nation to correct the way our government treats our bravest among us, or they won't. And I think a lot of people seeing how the government treats our military is kind of um, it's got to be one of the factors why they're so low in their recruiting at this point. The recruiting is in shambles. It is terrible. It seems to me like a self-inflicted wound almost. A lot of people gave the parallels to the evacuation of Afghanistan, to the evacuation of Vietnam. Um, Reading and learning a lot of history, there was a lot of problems getting people to join the military after the Vietnam War and into the 1980s. It was very, very difficult. And we may be experiencing something very, very similar to that. So it is what it is. I enjoyed the Navy. It was a riot. I had a lot of fun. Traveled the world. Um, Went to England, Europe. Um, we were one of very few boats that was allowed to pull into Iceland. We went to Iceland, Reykjavik, and Keflavik, Iceland. I got to see the Naval Air Station in Iceland. Got to go to Nova Scotia, Halifax, which is kind of a common port for North Atlantic boats, and then um, down through the Caribbean. Got to go to the Bahamas, Puerto Rico, places like that, and it was a lot of fun. I highly recommend if someone wants a really good experience. U.S. Navy is it will it'll kick your ass if you pick the right job. It'll kick your ass, but it was a lot of fun. I got to see a lot of things. I got to do a lot of things, and one of the things that always bothered me while I was in boot camp, I was awarded a ribbon, and me and my best friend at the time, we uh, we were actually in boot camp together and A school together. It was pretty interesting. We were both awarded ribbons for serving in time of combat, and Um, it bothered both of us because it was we didn't do anything to earn a ribbon. We didn't do anything to nothing. We didn't fight in the combat. Didn't help in the combat. We had friends that actually did. A friend of mine was on the U.S. naval ship that launched the recovery or rescue efforts for the U.S. pilot that was shot down over Kosovo, if I remember correctly. It was very, very long ago. But there was a U.S. pilot that was downed, I believe it was over Kosovo, and he was chased for like 6 or 7 days, managed to evade them. I believe the movie Behind Enemy Lines is actually very, very loosely based on what happened, but um, and then they launched helicopters to go rescue him from the boat a buddy of ours was on, and that's absolutely amazing. But yeah, we did not participate. We did not do anything like that, and um, it was always pretty pretty calm and mellow for us. The conflict in the Balkans was basically on pause for most of my time in the Navy, but I did have friends that stayed and retired. I did not. For a number of reasons, I decided just to um, bail on that, and came back home and went back to work, working on cars. And I spent many, many, many years working on cars and getting that stuff. I actually spent a year and a half professionally racing. Um, that was one of the best times of my life. We took a car to Daytona Motor Speedway to run the 24 hours of Daytona, which was absolutely incredible. It was an incredible experience. We did do many, many other races, but 24 hours of Daytona was a very, very big one. Throughout my life, I've always enjoyed drag racing. Drag racing's been one of my things, but getting to play with real money cars, real big stuff, that always on my list. So I enjoyed every minute of it. Took advantage of everything I could. Um, After that, I did not really want to come back to uh, doing the same thing at a dealership. So instead, a buddy of mine was actually employed by a local brewery. And some of you might be able to guess it. It's the largest brewery in the world. And so I worked and worked and worked and actually got a job there and have been employed there for the last 20 years and absolutely love my job, and everything about it is fantastic. It's provided a fantastic life for myself. And so I'm just absolutely blessed, way beyond what I deserve. But anyway, that's a little bit about me. And one of my thoughts with doing a podcast is everybody kind of has stories. And I really enjoy talking and stories. Every day I try to catch podcasts, something different, something unique, learn from people, and really just try to enjoy and have as much fun as anybody can have. Like I said at the beginning, I really enjoy Sean Ryan's podcast, and I really enjoy listening to military stories. But one of the things that I think is um, largely missing, Sean Ryan's amazing. His podcast is amazing. His guests are absolutely like the heroes of the American story. The people he has on are just incredible people, and it makes the podcast fantastic. But one of the things that I think everybody misses is everybody has a story, and it may not be killing Bin Laden, which is a phenomenal story. Anybody can can imagine what that is. That is something that's fantastic to listen to. But yeah, it's there's so many more people out there. There's so many more stories out there. There's so many more um, small events, funny things, tragic things that very rarely ever get told because they're never in the news. And that's something that really just made me stop and think. I was never in combat. I never got a chance to kill Bin Laden. Never got a chance to find uh, Saddam Hussein. Never had a chance to a lot of that stuff. Um, but that doesn't mean that there's not daily stories that I think never get told because they're never in the news. There's never fanfare. There's so many stories. When I was in the service, like I said, I was on a guided missile destroyer. It's a very small boat, 300 people, 500 feet long. In the Navy, it is a very small boat. While I was in service, I lived through 3 hurricanes on the boat. And most people don't know, in a hurricane, you should not be tied to a pier. Um, the way the water will beat that boat up and throw you inland, you leave. And it is so expensive to put a boat underway that you wait till the last minute, literally, before you cut rope and bail on the port. And all 3 incidences where we went through hurricanes, we waited till the last minute and sailed out into the hurricane. And 2 of them were pretty minor, nothing very spectacular. One of them was unbelievable. It was a Category 3 or Category 4 storm. It was a pretty big hurricane, and we got beat up for about 18 hours going right into it. And I got to tell you, at that point on the boat, I enjoyed the heck out of it. It was a lot of fun going through a big hurricane. That boat gets tossed. I'm talking Gilligan's Island kind of tossing. It is unreal. You would never imagine a boat getting tossed that badly. So I have a lot of stories from stuff like that and a lot of fun times. One of the funnest, I was just talking to someone the other day, they asked me if I get motion sickness. And I get one of the dumbest types of motion sickness. So the first time I ever got motion sick was on the boat, and it was the very first time we went out to sea. And it is just the stupidest story I've ever heard in my life of someone getting motion sickness. Now, I was on the boat for about a week before we went underway, and I was down in the middle of the boat at something called DC console. It's basically just a console monitoring all of our fire pumps and all of our basic stuff like that. And we're sitting there and we're tied to the pier, and the boat moves a little bit when it's tied to the pier, but realistically, it doesn't move too much, but it does move a little bit. And over that week, I'd really not had a problem. I was very, very used to it. After a week, it was nothing at all. But over the 1MC, the internal ship communications, they blow the whistle, signifying that they've cut mooring lines and we are now floating free of the dock. And immediately I'm motion sickness. Like, before anything starts moving, just the blowing of the whistle, and I'm motion sick. And the whole thing, real heavy feeling in the head, real upset stomach feeling, and we're not even in the ocean. Like, we're at the pier. The boat's not doing anything. And I spent probably about 12 hours feeling that way, and the doc on board passed out. Um, uh, Meds to help deal with that, and immediately I'm just, at that point, I'm fine, and we're all good. After that first day, I had a blast every time we were underway. And up in the North Atlantic, the ocean can really bounce a ship. It is unbelievable how much a ship can bounce up in the North Atlantic. The seas are very, very rough. It's a lot of fun, throwing water over the bow, all kinds of stuff like that. So really had a lot of fun in the Navy, and that's really the type of motion sickness I get. Is I get really very stupid motion sickness. Another point in time that that I got motion sickness was when I was actually working on my truck, of all things. When I was working on my truck, I had a broken sway bar link in my truck, and it was pretty freaking funny. So I repaired the sway bar link, and evidently I'd been driving for a while with a broken sway bar link and never noticed it. Never never anything, but I'm under there one day changing the oil, and I got a broken sway bar link. Yeah, whatever. Order a sway bar link and start putting the new sway bar link in. I actually had to cut the old one out because it was rusted together, but put a new sway bar in link in there, and I'm pulling out of my driveway, and the radical difference from turning with the sway bar end link now in and functioning versus before when it did not function immediately gave me motion sickness. And it was just, I absolutely cannot explain that. It's just the stupidest thing in the world. So I get motion sickness for just the stupidest reasons. And I chalk that more up to just mental. I don't see that as actually being motion sickness, but just something mental, something broken in my brain that tells me maybe I should be motion sickness. But yeah, that's I was talking to someone about motion sickness the other day. I went through all 3 hurricanes. Nothing. Not a problem in the world. In fact, I had more fun in the hurricanes than I ever did in a port. The hurricanes are fun on a small boat. You get tossed, you get beat up, you're all over the ship. Uh, I stood watch. In fact, I took watch for a couple other people that were not faring as well during the hurricane. And I'm up and down ladders and through up and down this, that, and the other, and just had the time of my life. Just the rare few of us that were up and about were really having fun during the hurricane. You know it, that boat's not going to sink. There's nothing that'll take that boat down. But yeah, it was a ton of fun. Had nothing but excitement and good times. So I would encourage anybody, if you want free college money, if you want to see the world, you want to have fun, U.S. Navy's a whole lot of fun. It is. They'll teach you wild stuff. You'll get to play with things that you could not imagine. But one thing I always had just immense respect for, though, was military snipers, and that's one thing that I focus on with guns. And I really love doing long range shooting. I don't have access to anything beyond 600 yards at the moment, but we're actually going to go to a new gun club in Byers here in a month, and we're going to check out this gun club, and they've got 1,000-yard range, and we're going to try to have some fun there for a day, see how expensive it is to join. Usually gun clubs are not terribly expensive, and I would encourage everybody to join a gun club. Gun clubs are great. The people are great. Everything's fantastic. The gun club I belong to right now is Buffalo Creek Gun Club. It's on the historic U.S. Army Camp Fix. It was an old military training grounds in the middle of the Rocky Mountains. I don't know what they were training for, but they were doing something up there, and they turned it into a gun club, and it is just pristine. It's beautifully maintained, beautifully taken care of. And everybody likes it. It's a lot of fun. So I'm hoping this other gun club in Byers is going to be a good fit. So we'll just have to see on that. really, really super impressed with how that Remington Mosin is shooting. That thing shoots so smooth, so clean. That is just such a great rifle. I am very, very happy with that. Um, and it gives me a chance to kind of retire my other Remington. Um, I also got an email the other day that my 6.5 Mosin the last couple of months has been at an ammo manufacturer up in northern Colorado, and he is um, working on loads and loadouts for that rifle to see how good um, that rifle can shoot. And took him the rifle, uh, the bullets I had bought for it, the modified cases. It's a 7.62 by 54R that is neck down to 6.5 millimeter. And it was actually an idea. I had the idea, and then I found a guy who had the exact same idea. It was basically resurrecting what's called the 6.5 Russian biathlon, and they used it in the Olympics for 1 year, I believe, and then the U.S. Olympics went to 22 long rifle, and so it was only used for a very short time. There are quite a few rifles out there that are leftovers from the biathlon, and I find that really fascinating. There is no ammo, period. The end. Nothing available. There's no dyes. There's nobody makes brass for it. There's nothing. There is literally nothing. You're starting from scratch, or not quite scratch, but really close to starting from scratch. So what the Russians did, they necked down a 6.5 or a 7.62 to 6.5. That's easy enough. People have been doing that since the dawn of modern cartridges. So, the guy I found, he had actually had the idea long before I did. So he had worked with Pacific Tool and Gauge and came up with a reamer for the project and came up with basic dies and such and set up the rifle for me. I had purchased a brand new 6.5 stainless barrel with the idea, and then had no idea where to go from there. So when I found him, he had already um, had the reamer made and was shooting it. And I said, "Hey, how about you make me one?" And he said, "Money talks." So for cash, we had a rifle made. I have not had a chance to shoot it. It has literally been just such a long-term project. Just seems like every year is just a little closer, a little closer, a little closer. And then I found a company up north called Colorado Custom Cartridge. And basically, what they do is they make custom loads for your rifles. And I just got an email. They just finished up with it. They had a lot of fun with it, and it's ready to go. And I am super excited to go pick that up. Hoping I can go pick that up tomorrow. But I may have a problem with my truck, which may dictate that I have to work on my truck instead of going and picking up a rifle. And that is a terrible way to spend a day. But the 6.5 Mosin Nagant is going to be at the range very soon. As soon as I pick it up, I am super excited to go straight to the range with that rifle, and just I am just as excited for the 6.5 as I am my new Remington, which is patterning about 2/3 to 3/4 MOA at 100 yards without any load development, without anything. In fact, I haven't even had a chance to polish the bolt and bed in the joints in the bolt, which I'm going to do a video on, just a real basic video of how to kind of tune a bolt. and make it real nice and smooth. My black Remington, the bolt in my black Remington is so unbelievably smooth actioning that it's most people wouldn't even acknowledge that it's an old Russian garbage rifle. And that's another thing. I really do not like the term garbage rod. I think the Mosin again is way beyond a garbage rod, but I do believe it's probably the bottom of the list for military rifles. Um, it's got some quirks that are kind of weird. The bolt is unnecessarily multiple piece complicated. I mean, Mauser had one piece complete bolts. There's no reason to use a two piece bolt. There's a lot of things about the Mosin bolt that is just very uniquely Russian. But bolt aside, the rifle is actually very, very competent. And one of my things is I want to actually show how competent a Mosin Nagant actually is, because I think a lot of people are very misdirected in thinking they're garbage rods, probably because they were made by the millions. They were flooded into America. They were very, very, very cheap. The limited ammo you could get was terrible at best. The best ammo you can find for it, I believe, is probably PPU. But hand loads are really the best for a Mosin. You can really see how great a Mosin is with some hand loads. And yes, the bolts are unnecessarily complicated. It is what it is. But the rifles actually shoot really, really well. So I've known a lot of people throughout the years that have actually been hunting with Mosin Nagants. I've known a lot of game hunters that have taken a lot of game with Mosin Nagants. They've been all over the world. They've done everything from Olympics to, the defense of Stalingrad to like the rifles have been there and done that. And I think that's really, really impressive. There's a lot of military rifles that never went anywhere and never did anything. And really, it is impressive that a rifle actually did that. And I think it deserves a lot more honor than it really gets. And I think it's probably because when they were imported by the millions. And, when you have just an overabundance of them, the prices are very, very low. People don't give them a lot of respect as respect is due. But at the end of the day, it's a bolt action rifle. It's not a modern rifle, but I think we can get some really very modern results out of the rifle. The other thing that I don't buy, everybody says it's an antique because of a rimmed cartridge. And I think that's a load of shit. There are plenty of rifles that shoot rimmed cartridges that are fantastic. No one's going to say a 4570 is garbage because it has a rim. It's an antique round. So is the Mosin round. That doesn't make it any less effective. And people complain about rim lock. Rim lock's not an issue. You're being pedantic. Yeah, it's not a rimless cartridge. It is a rimmed cartridge. But everybody overcame that. There's belt-fed machine guns that run that rimmed cartridge. There's box magazine-fed sniper rifles and machine guns and all kinds of stuff that feed that. It's not that big of a deal. A rimmed cartridge is not that big of a deal. But some people say it is. Some people say that's why it's obsolete. I think that's crock. I just got a James Pollard. No rim lock on my Mosin. You got that right. It doesn't take much to not have rim lock. I've never had rim lock in my life. I don't even know if I could force rim lock on my Mosin. It's not an issue. People make some of the weirdest some people make some of the weirdest reasons to hate on a Mosin. And I don't get it. You know, yeah, I'll be the first one to admit I love Mosin Nagants. I've got dozens of them, literally dozens of Mosin Nagants. All different types, all different arsenals. I for some reason I thought it was the wildest thing that there's so many variations and there's so many different countries and there's so many it is really unique to see all the different progressions of the Mosin Nagant throughout its life, because they had plenty of opportunities to change and they didn't. They stuck with the rifle. It's a very stout platform, but people just come up with some of the weirdest things. The Mosin Nagant, it's not a Mauser. It's just not. Mauser is probably the best bolt action rifle. Everybody ripped them off. That is a very, very high praise when everybody in the gun industry is blatantly ripping you off and stealing all of your designs. That's a blatant freaking admission that you've got it better than anybody else. And let's face it, the Mauser is king. Everybody was ripping off Mauser. Mauser was contracting with everybody. Mauser was letting people make them under license. Mauser was king. It really, really was. But that doesn't mean everybody else was bad. So I think there's, you know, the best way to put it, Mauser was the king of rifles, and they got their ass kicked twice. It wasn't the rifles. You know, the Russians overcame the Germans with the Mosin twice. So a rifle's a rifle. The tool is the tool. It works, and it works well. I can get, just like my last trip to the range. If you didn't see it, it's video on my channel. The red and black Mosin, it printed some amazing groups with the same ammo. I didn't try any different loads. I am going to try different loads, but I use the exact same loadout that I use in my black Mosin, my black Remington, and got, you know, 2/3 to 3/4 MOA at 100 yards out of a brand new barrel. It's barely broken in. I did not do any load development. I stuck cartridges in and it went bang. And I got fantastic groups out of it. The rifle's fine. The rifle is absolutely fine. And all the people that say this, that, and the other affects this, that, and the other, no. The basics will always be the basics. And the basics that I come to is the barrel needs to be heavy enough for accuracy. The bullet needs to be good enough for accuracy. I think that's one that a lot of people miss. Get decent bullets. Sierra Match Kings are cheap and they're very good. Don't use hunting rounds. Don't use lightweight rounds. Don't use Mickey Mouse stuff. It doesn't work. What works, works. You need a good heavy barrel. You need very good head spacing. Nice and tight chamber. Very short jump. There's very little. It's not a secret. Probably the only other one is probably bedding the rifle. Bed the rifle is very, very important for accuracy. Keeps the action nice and tight in the stock and keeps it from moving around. But that's really the key. And you can make pretty much any cartridge look like a king if you build the rifle to be accurate. And that's really my philosophy in the whole thing. I don't believe in any witch work. You know, there is very definitive limits. So much like my 308, I know the limitations. About 800 yards. When it drops through transonic, it's going to go wacky. It's not a heavy bullet. It does not come through the supersonic to subsonic very cleanly. It is a fairly light bullet. It will get disrupted. Your practical long distance is about 800 yards or less. And that's science. Everybody and their brother has worked these out for years and years and years and years. We all know that is what it is. Now, the interesting thing is my load for 308 and my load for 762 by 54R are identical. They are 43 and a half grains of Varget over a Sierra Match King. Sierra Match King on the 308 is 175 grains, and the Sierra Match King for the Russian 762 is 174 grains. That is the difference. That is the wild difference. They both shoot spectacularly well. They are so close in all ballistics data that the 308 and the Russian 54R are fairly identical. James, I betted my M44. It made a big difference in that. You're dang right it does. That the betting is absolutely important. Now, again, I don't want to bash the Russian rifles. Like I said, I've got dozens of them. They're fantastic. The wood and the inletting is a little sloppy. And I think that's because, and I've run into this before, the machining of the receiver and the front lug is not always good. There are a lot of differences, and they move around a lot. Any Mosin, it is very, very important that you bed the action to the stock. It is very, very important. That is where a lot of your accuracy comes from. And really, when you fire it, you got to think all the vibrations in that action on the immediate pop of the round, that action is going to start vibrating in that stock. And if there is slop in that bedding of that stock, in that inletting of that stock, it can start moving around. And it really doesn't matter how tight you crank down on those bolts. There is a point at which you can't control that movement. And yes, simple bedding is a huge improvement. And even the barrels are not that bad on Russian rifles. I have probably 3 or 4 Mosins that I would say are as close to unfired as you could imagine. And they all measure out at 312. All of my really, really clean barrels. It's supposed to be 311, but we're not gonna talk about that. I've heard of some that are egregiously big, but the quality of the metal and the thickness of the barrels is actually pretty darn good. A lot of military barrels are very, very thin, and the obvious reason is you got a soldier that's got to carry that around. When you've got a super thick, heavy barrel, when you've got large ammunition, when you're starting to load that soldier down, a lot of the militaries started thinning out those barrels and making them super, super pencil thin. And I see a lot of accuracy problems with doing that. Barrel whip is very, very real. The worst I've ever seen is probably the PSL. The PSL barrel whip's like freaking mad. But as you start making that barrel thinner and thinner, yeah, you're reducing the load that soldier's got to carry. But you're also reducing the accuracy of the shots. Now, the reality of the situation when it comes to how accurate a shooter, a general soldier is going to be, the soldier's generally going to be shooting within, I believe military doctrine says about 300 yards. Open sights, 300 yards. I hope you got good eyes. It's not as easy as you would imagine, but they did it. They did it fantastically well. I I think the Mosin really gets a very, very bad name. And I got to tell you, I love the M44 too. I've got a couple of M44s that are spectacularly beautiful. Uh, love the pokey bayonet. I actually like the M38s and the standard carbines a little bit better, but I love the carbines. I love the short rifles. They're handy, um, and you don't see them very often. They're very, very, uh, very hard to find nowadays. But when it comes to the accuracy of the rifle, I honestly, I don't think there is a bolt action military rifle that is inherently inaccurate. Now, there are some sloppy builds. There are rifles out there that were cut on worn out um, tooling that are way out of spec, there are rifles out there that had problems. They say a lot of the last ditch Japanese Arisakas were terrible. Yeah, they're terrible for a reason. Go back to when they were making Arisakas during the good old days. The Arisakas were fantastic rifles. They're very, very good rifles. James, I wish I got an M38 before the prices took a jump. Yeah, I tell you, I have dozens of Mosins. I wish I would have bought more. The prices went through the roof. I'm seeing M38 $700-800. That is insanity. Let's be real. They're military bolt action rifles. They were made by the millions. I got to tell you, that's a heavy price to pay. When you start getting into brand new rifle territory, and I would say not a fan of the Remington 700, not a fan of modern Remingtons, but you're looking $800 to $1,000 for a brand new out of the box modern Remington. I think most older bolt action rifles will probably outshoot a modern Remington 700. I don't. Ugh, I really don't like the new Remingtons. But yeah, you're talking about brand new rifle territory for something that's been around the world, been there, done that. You want to talk about the rifles that actually killed people by the millions? Holy cow. But I'll tell you, if you want to find the deals, there are still deals out there to be had. The best place to start with finding deals is make friends with every local pawn shop you've got. Every local pawn shop, they don't care. If they make $50, they made $50 and they are happy to make that $50. They don't do their research. They don't look up anything. That I've seen so many, like probably a quarter of my rifle collection came from pawn shops. They don't have a clue. They had no idea what the heck it was. They don't bother looking up what it's worth. They offer somebody grossly undervalued money for it, and then they slap $50 on top of it and they move it the next day. It is crazy how pawn shops do this. But just last summer, picked up a 1903 Springfield. It was listed on the shelf at the pawn shop as a 303 British. What the hell? Like, you're not even trying at that point. '03 Springfield with a scope on it. Not going to say it's a very good scope, but any scope is a good scope for a 22 long rifle, I'll tell you that. But an '03 Springfield with a scope for 200 and what was it, $209? My God almighty. So yeah, if the best deals to be had are at the pawn shops. Occasionally, Gunbroker pops up with good deals. I try to at least scan through Gunbroker on a daily basis. I've picked up some pretty wild rifles. The daughter's M1917 Eddystone in 30-06. That was $100 on Gunbroker, and they called it a parts rifle. All the parts were there. Stock was cracked. Stock had a big chip out of it, and it was cracked, and it was pretty much firewood, but a functioning and shooting M1917 and 30-06 for $100? You've got to be kidding me. That is insanity. So, yeah, Gunbroker, it's very hit or miss. Gunbroker is you got to be there at the right time, and there aren't very many. But what I keep an eye on, it's pretty amazing when you fall into a deal like that. It's awesome. And keep in line with your pawn shops, watch the gun brokers. You can find these deals. These deals are out there. So the daughter's M1917, we took it to the range last week. We put some rounds through it. James, I don't find deals like that. Dang it, you will. It takes some perseverance. It does. Yard sales. I've heard people score big on yard sales, but yeah, stay with it. I promise you the deals are there. I swear. When I find these $100 gun broker things, I actually put the page in the video because it's ridiculous. A 1917 Eddystone for $100 on Gunbroker. Ain't nobody believes that. Ain't no one got time for that. Yeah, it actually happens. It really does happen. So, the daughters, 1917. We took it to the range last week. It's in a nice Boyd target stock. We put a muzzle brake on it because 30-06 can be pretty spicy. It's got a nice 1-inch recoil pad, nice 1-inch limb saver from Boyd's on it. Little muzzle brake on it. You can still tell it's a 30-06, but it's very tame. It is very, very tame. It shoots fantastically. We got we were at 50 yards, and we got about a 1-inch group out of it with PPU 168 grain 30-06. It's not the easiest PPU to find, I'll tell you that. But it is not the Grand ammunition. Do not feed 168 in your Grand unless you want very excessive wear on your Grand. But with that 30-06, we got about a 1-inch group at 50 yards. And that's pretty impressive. Now, I did not bed that stock yet. So we wanted to get that stock put together real quick. The action fits beautifully. It's a pretty nice fitting stock. It is not sloppy at all. We are going to bed the stock this winter, but we wanted to slap it together so we can get some range time with it and get her on the rifle and see how she feels running the rifle at the range and seeing what she can do at the range. Like I said, we are going to bed the stock. We just didn't do it just yet. But yeah, an inch group at 50 yards with a scope. That's pretty darn good. I think we can do better. I know some good hand load recipes for 30-06. I've got an 03 Springfield. I've got a few 1917s. My dad's got an 03 Springfield. We're working to get some good pet loads for the 30-06 to make it nice and happy. And I'll bet money that an old $100 thrown away nothing rifle on Gunbroker will be sub MOA every day of the week. I bet you money. I will bet anybody on here money that rifle will be sub MOA with some good hand loads, a bedded stock, and it still has the military barrel. We're not talking about a heavy barrel. Now, the 1917 does have a heavier barrel than the 03 Springfield, but still has the factory barrel that it came with, and it's actually a really good shooter. I'm really impressed with that rifle. It was a lot of fun putting rounds downrange with that rifle. So we'll get some hand loads, and yeah, that rifle is gonna be a killer. It's gonna be fun. So with that, with the Mausers, really the rifle I'm waiting for, um, uh, 3 months ago, I sent 3 actions to McGowan Barrels, and I'm just waiting to hear back. One of them is a P14 in 303 British. That is, it's having the barrel replaced. It was a parade and drill and parade rifle, and the chamber was drilled and plugged. So I sent the action to them, and they're going to duplicate the original contours of the barrel and make it as was made before. Now, P14 is identical to the 1917s. James, the 1917s were very accurate. Yes, they were. They were very accurate. So were the P14s. That's why I don't get the whole rim argument. Lord have mercy. P14s in the 1917s were deadly accurate. It has nothing to do with a rim. Anyway. So the P14 was actually an upgrade to the old SMLE Enfields as a more modern rifle. And it was basically just a straight ripoff of a Mauser. It was a Mauser that fired 303 British. Now, the basics that they did, they wanted the big rear sight with, it was, what do they call it? A peep sight. So they wanted a big peep sight on the rear of the receiver. And really, when you find them nowadays, that's what's terrible about them, is they cut that sight off to add a scope or to add a more accurate adjustable peep sight or whatever. But the P14s were fantastic, but they were like a pound or two heavier than an SMLE Enfield. But one of the things, the SMLEs, they were known for being inaccurate. They had a lot of barrel movement. So when they designed the P14, specifically, they said they wanted a heavier barrel. And it really made just a fantastic rifle. And a lot of people say that is the high watermark. The P14 and the M17 is the high watermark of bolt action rifles. You cannot get any better than the P14 and the 1917. And I got to say, I don't think they're wrong. The high watermark may be filled by a lot of positions, but the P14 and the 1917 it's the smoothest run in action. It's really a fantastic rifle. Like I cannot find fault in these rifles. They are very, very good rifles. So I got a P14 sent to McGowan to have the barrel duplicated as military style. I also sent a stripped action to them to have them set up a heavy barrel to see, was there anything left on the table. I like heavy barrels. I like long range heavy barrels. That's my shooting style. That's what I gravitate towards. But was the P14 barrel heavy enough to really sling that 303 British as good as possible? The other thing I sent was a Siamese Mauser. Now, the Siamese Mauser is a very unique Mauser. It's designed for a rimmed cartridge. The 8x50 and 8x52 Siamese. It's a rimmed cartridge. The rim size is identical to Russian. And I want to see, is there anything different between a Mosin Nagant action and a Mauser action? So what they're doing, the exact same barrel profile that I had made for the red and black Remington is being remade for the Siamese action. And I want a side-by-side comparison between a Mosin that is set up properly, that is chambered properly, that is proven on paper to be sub MOA. Is there anything better you can do with a Mauser? And the reason comes back to the whole idea of the Mosin being a garbage rod. I keep saying I don't believe the Mosin is a garbage rod, but with all the differences between a Mosin Nagant action and a Mauser action, we all know the Mauser is superior. Everybody ripped off the Mauser. Is the Mauser actually better at doing its job than a Mosin? Because that's really what it comes down to at the end of the day. When we're talking about accuracy, it needs to actually do the job. And I don't really care what name is on the action. Does it do its job? So, the barrel on the red and black Remington is a McGowan. It's a 5A profile. I'm having the exact same profile made for the Siamese, and I want to set them side by side. And I should be able to get the exact same results side by side. Or is one of them actually going to be better side by side? And I got to tell you, the results I got out of the Remington is pretty good. What about the Siamese Mauser? What am I going to get out of a Mauser action? Is it actually doing the job better than the Mosin? I got to tell you, I don't believe it is. Now, no doubt, the machining, the tolerances, everything is better on a Mauser. But does that actually make it do the job better? I don't think so. I don't think we're going to see a lot of difference, but that's what this whole endeavor is all about. So yeah, it's I got the 3 actions. They should be done anytime now, and I cannot wait to sling some 303 British. I can't wait to get more of these 1917s out to the range. I've got another 1917 I'm taking to the range. 6.5 Mosin is done. Oh, I just need time at the range. Don't we all? But I think when it comes down to all the military rifles throughout all the world, they're all better than an M14. M14 was terrible. Trust me, I've had my share of all those, but M14 was pretty terrible, and they all beat an M14. The worst Mosin Nagant will beat an M14. James, do you have a jungle carbine? Enfield jungle carbine, the Ishapore? I do not have an Ishapore. I don't have a jungle carbine. No, I don't. That's one I've been looking for an awful long time. And Colorado is a weird it's a weird gun market. And I gotta say, Colorado is a weird market for everything. So I grew up building cars, as you can see in my background, all the cars, all the car stuff. really, the same thing as with guns. There's not a lot of firearms surplus firearms that make it to Colorado, which I find very, very weird. Um, yeah, Mark V Enfield. Yeah, I believe the jungle carbines. I believe, if I remember correct, I am not at all an Enfield uh, um, aficionado. I really, the Pattern 14 is the first 303 Brit I've ever had, and haven't had a chance to shoot them yet. So I don't know a lot about the Enfields. I do believe, if I'm not mistaken, there are multiple variations. Some of them are British made, some of them are actually made in India. Some of them are 303 British, and some of them are 7.6251 NATO. Um, I I know what jungle carbines are. I've had them on my watch list. I do not know a lot about Enfields, but I don't know a super ton whole lot about them. But yeah, they are on my list of stuff that to watch for. I'm always watching the pawn shops. There's a couple of really good gun shops here in Colorado that deal with older military rifles, older fun rifles, stuff like that. Um, but really, 303 and infield stuff is very, very thin out here. There's not a lot of infields out here. There's not a lot of milsurps out here. Weirdly enough, most of mine that I buy, I actually buy on Gunbroker. But it seems my sister actually lives on the East Coast. The disparity between gun shops here and gun shops on the East Coast is night and day. Night and day. At most, you walk into, like, I walk into, say, a pawn shop. The couple of pawn shops that I hit on a regular basis, walk into them, and it's modern rifles, modern rifles, modern rifles, modern rifles, and a few shotguns. And it's really jungle carbines were only manufactured in old. Oh, my eyes aren't that good. Old Blighty? I don't know that. Thank you, Redneck Preppy, and welcome. Welcome to see you. England. Okay. Um, I honestly, I don't know hardly much about the Enfields. So there is your source right there, Redneck Preppy. He is on that stuff. Um, that is, I love watching his content. I'm super happy to see you here, Redneck Preppy. I love your shows. You do a great job on that. And yeah, 303 British is not common here in Colorado. I literally could probably count on one hand how many 303 Brit chambered rifles I have seen in the last decade. Oh, you probably get more views than I do, my friend. You absolutely. So, the totally derailed my train. Oh my lord. So, where was I going with my rambling? I don't even remember. So, the oh my gosh. So, the 303 British, the pawn shops. So, when I walk into my pawn shops, I see modern rifles, modern rifles, modern rifles. Very rarely will I pop up with something different. And it's usually a Bubba. It's a sad tale. Bubba gets his hands on way too many good things. And it just is what it is. But I don't shy away from Bubba's. My theory, I do not cut up good rifles. Period. The end. If I find a whole rifle, untouched, unmodified, stays that way. And it's a great addition to my collection. If I find a Bubba, it doesn't bother me so much, unless it's a super rare one. But it doesn't bother me as much that Bubba did that, because it kind of allows me an open door to do something different. And I'm not opposed to that. These rifles were drug all over the world. They went through amazing battles. They survived some of the worst things on earth. These these rifles are battle tested. Just because Bubba got a hold of it, drilled some holes in it, does not mean it doesn't do its job anymore. Is it collectible? No. You just destroyed all the collectability. But what that does is it means, okay, let's go back to the daughter's 1917. The rear sight was cut off of it. It was done pretty good, but the rear sight was cut off of it. Whole bunch of holes drilled in it. None of them were in the line. It was a mess. Had the gunsmith weld up all the holes, re-drill them for the new scope base. We're back in business. Is it collectible? No. All the collectible aspects are gone. It will never be collectible again. But that doesn't mean it's not a 1917. That doesn't mean it's no longer one of the best bolt action rifles ever made. It's still a 1917 Eddystone. It still has that heritage. It still has all the stuff going for it that it had before Bubba got a hold of it. So yeah, it's kind of sad to see how many rifles Bubba gets his hands on, but at the same time, it is not at all garbage at that point. What it is, it's a blank slate. Now I can get a stock for it. Now I can mount a scope to it. Let's do something fun. Let's do something different. We got her it was supposed to be red and black, come out a little more pinkish than red. That's fine. It's not a big deal, but it is going to be a fantastic shooter, and we're keeping it alive. Even though it's not going to be a collector ever in its life again, it is still going to be a very good, very useful rifle that, I mean, it's a 30-06. It's a fantastic rifle. It's going to be a good shooter for forever, and it's no longer going to be a neglected thing anymore. So yeah, I like to see rifles in their original configuration, but in all honesty, I take it like it is. If it's a Bubba, it's a clean slate. Let's do something cool. If it's original, man, that thing survived the last 100 years, the last 80 years without being cut up. So preserve the ones that are still out there in original condition. And if it's Bubba, have fun. I mean, this whole hobby is all about having fun, and some aspects of it, just people don't have the fun that I think they really could have. And I think we need to have fun with this hobby. So I'm having a blast. I'm loving every minute of it. James, I like the AR style Mosins. Well, okay, there is a limit to what Bubba should be allowed to do. My lord, the ugly freaking Mosins. Probably the only benefit to the Mosin market drying up in America is the fact that we are seeing way less of the Mall Ninja Mosins. Those were just unbelievably terrible. So Colorado is weird. We don't see as many milsurps. On the East Coast, milsurps are king. When I served in the Navy, it was back when SKSs were being just flooded in, and $99 SKSs, Russian SKSs. And got to tell you how many times I'm kicking myself for not buying up every SKS I could come across, but I did not. And yeah, that's very short-sighted. So I remember the SKS craze on the East Coast, and really, I think all of the importers are really kind of uh, East Coast centric, but really not a lot makes it out into Colorado. I don't know why, but I even see this when I'm buying on Gunbroker. Pretty much everything I buy on Gunbroker comes from the East Coast, Pennsylvania, um, all throughout the Rust Belt area. Very little actually makes it out here. So I'm very, very hawk-eyed on pawn shops and stuff like that for what we see, what we can get, what's out there, what's available. I'm very, very attuned to what we see. So yeah, I keep my eye out. There's a few really good pawn shops in my area that pop up with some really good stuff from time to time. Some of it is just a blatant rip off. Like they're ripping someone off here or someone off there. The gun store half an hour away has tons of milsurps. Prices are out of range. Yes. Um, really, the last 10 years has been very, very dry on milsurps. Uh, I don't know if we're ever really going to see a resurgence of milsurp activity. Did any of you see the pictures that come out of Ukraine from the salt mine that they uncovered? The billions of rounds of ammunition, crates of Thompson submachine guns, crates of Maxim machine guns. Um, that right there, that is what I want to find. But I'm not entirely sure we're going to see large imports of milsurps ever again. I think that has come and gone. Now I know there's some NATO or not NATO, some friendly countries. I think mostly Southeast Asian countries that we've helped, maybe South American countries that have I want to say Garans, M1 carbines, stuff like that. But I cannot imagine there are a whole lot more stockpiles of World War era bolt action rifles laying around. I mean, we think about how many crates of Finnish Mosins made it into this country. Can't imagine the Finns have very many Mosins left themselves. It's right now we're going to deal with two things. The importation's dried up. It's been that way for a decade. I don't think anybody really saw it coming to an end abruptly like it did, but I think the importation of milsurps is pretty much dead. So we're going to have to fight with an ever dwindling population of rifles that are available, and we're going to have to deal with whatever this inflation is destined to bring us. The inflation's not going to be fun. I think we're only at the beginning of this, and that kind of concerns me. I'm not going to lie. I've got definitely some concerns about how inflation's going to go over the next probably at least 2 years. Um, I do not believe we're getting a handle on this. It's really kind of sad how to see it where it is. I can remember $79 SKS rifles by the crate at gun shows. God, I know. Oh, just last summer, I saw at a gun show here locally, a Tanner gun show, big regional gun show. They guy had on a table a Russian. It was actually a Russian TT-33 and 7.62 by 25 Tokarev. $3,500. Now, mind you, the Russian Tokarevs are pretty rare in America, but the Tokarev pistols themselves are not rare. The last time I saw a Russian Tokarev pistol for sale, it was something on the order of about $700 or $800. 3,500 for a interwar period semi-automatic pistol that was made by the freaking millions. I get it, it's a gun show. You're gonna pay the gun show premium, but dang, that is pricey. And yes, SKSs were so cheap back in the day. Glad we don't see SKS Bubbas much anymore. I think a lot of people are glad of that. SKS was a very good rifle. Had some shortcomings, but SKS is a very good rifle. In fact, a lot of ways, I kind of like the SKS a little more than the AK. But, I mean, it's all academic at the end of the day. Both of them are fantastic for their job. They both do their job very, very well. SKS was a very formidable rifle. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I want to say, what countries was it that one of them still uses the SKS for its basic National Guard? It was I can't remember. But anyway, yeah, the prices of milsurps, they're not going to come down. I don't think they're going to come down. And over the last few years, I've really, I think I only ever have bought one milsurp that's actually still in military condition, and that's the 1917 Eddystone that I found here locally that was untouched and unmodified. And that one goes right into the safe. It's going to be taken care of. It's going to be preserved as military, and it's going to be the way it is. Really, over the last few years, what I've been finding is really trying to find the Bubba deals. What out there that Bubba got his hands on can be turned into something new, something usable and fun, and that's kind of where I've been going. That and trying to bring back, like, if I find a rifle that Bubba like chopped the stock on, but all the metal work and everything's still there, that I'll resurrect back into a good milsurp collectible. Thankfully, they don't serial number stocks, but the Russians actually did. I actually have an M44. It was made in 1948. The stock is serialized with the serial number of the action. I've never seen that on another Mosin. It also has no refurbishment stampings on it. It's a 1948, so it did not go through the First or Second World War. It did not need to be refurbished. It also probably never was given away to any other country. So that rifle, I believe, is unissued. 1948 was a very low production year, and I think it probably got put in a crate and never opened again until it was sold to me. It is a gorgeous M44, absolutely stunningly gorgeous M44, but the stock actually has the action serial number stamped in it. So I've never seen that on another Mosin. But yeah, I'll resurrect a Bubba rifle if the barrel's not cut or the sights aren't cut off of it. My M44 had the bayonet lug cut off. Yep, that was very, very common. There's not a lot you can do. The sleeve you can, if you can get the pins out, you can pull the sleeve off that has the front sight and the bayonet lug on and find another one. But some states don't allow you to have the bayonet lugs or the bayonet on it, which I think is freaking ridiculous. But you can um, replace it with a correct bayonet lug on it. But what I have found, if you go down that route, the pinholes will probably not line up. They were, I think, probably drilled by hand and not in a jig fixture or anything. So there is no guarantee that the holes will line up or work, and you may have to drill new pinholes when you seat the new sleeve on there for the sight. It is a little bit of work, but I can go both ways. If I have an M44 and someone cut the bayonet lug off of it, I may not be too offended by that, simply because at that point it's basically an M38. Um, I guess that would just come down to if you wanted to try to fix it, but that wouldn't offend me too much if I had an M44 that just didn't have a bayonet. To be honest, I've never needed the bayonet at the gun range, so the bayonet, that's kind of a gray area for me. But yeah, that's I do enjoy the little carbines. The little carbines are fun, and that's kind of I found a New England Westinghouse Mosin Nagant that Bubba had cut the barrel short on. And just for kicks, I decided um, to build it back as a carbine and got all the parts together. Probably spent way too much freaking money on it, but found a nice laminate stock for a 9159, which would be more correct, and built it back up into a military carbine. And it's a fantastic little range shooter. Does it have any historical provenance? No, no. It was bubbed. It has no historical significance as a bubbed, but it is back in military configuration, and it is a ton of fun to shoot. The little Mosins are a ton of fun. They are a mule kicker. They toss fireballs. They're a lot of fun at the gun range. One that I've been keeping my eye out for years ago. I don't know if any of you have ever heard of it or seen it. There was a crate of Russian M44s that were intermediate length. They the So M44 has a 20-inch barrel, and I think these were measured at 23 inches. Nobody knows why, but the stocks are a little bit longer to accommodate a little bit longer of a barrel. Still has a bayonet folding on it. Has a little bit longer handguard, if I remember. These were made this way in kind of an intermediate length in between the 9130 and the M38, M44 configuration. That's something I've always kept my eye out, because if those hit the market anywhere, I would love to throw a chance at getting one of those. But that's one of the oddities that nobody knows why they made them, and that's kind of one of the fun things of collecting that I enjoy. Is, there's things that were done that nobody really knows why they were done. I've heard of that mystery, and for a few people have. There are actually pictures floating around of them in a crate. Um, yeah, they're that's one that I try to keep an eye out for. I'll never find one. Like, let's be honest, they probably were not imported. Um, they're probably not going to be imported. Right now, there is so much acrimony going on in the gun control and this and that. Really, I don't don't know if we're going to see much more cool stuff coming in. I've heard now, I made a short video about the Serbian weapons and ammunition, not necessarily prohibition, but they're putting it on hold for like a month. I saw another video. Someone was saying that now the European Union as a whole may be looking at prohibiting export of ammunition and arms because of pending calamity on the European continent. Yeah, I don't foresee any cool stuff coming for quite a while, guys. That's just, our heyday may have been the 90s and 2000s. Now it just seems it may be dried up, and it may be dried up for good. I mean, can you think? Here's an interesting thought. Name a rifle that may still be out there in any good numbers. I can tell you there's probably going to be a push to prohibit parts kits from coming in now. There's probably going to be a lot of stuff that really is going to try to clamp down on, realistically, the collecting community. Like, while I don't agree with the gun control BS, you can at least kind of understand maybe why they want to. I don't agree with it. I'll fight it. But what the heck with the collecting community? Like, people don't go around freaking shooting people with old antique collectibles. That's something I'm never really gonna freaking understand. Like, it just does not happen. And why they would want to restrict old classic collectible antiques, stuff like that, just it boggles my mind. There should be nearly no restriction for bolt action rifles. Like, no one's going to go into a war with a bolt action rifle. No one's going to go on a mass shooting with a bolt action rifle. No one's going to. I don't see any point to any of the thought process between trying to restrict this stuff. It's pointless. But parts kits have been a real thorn in their side for a long time. Carcanos, there was just recently a bunch of Carcanos. There was also the Ethiopian haul. Have you seen that on Forgotten Weapons has been doing random videos about what they've been finding in the Ethiopian haul. Very, very old, antique, very old rifles, single shots, stuff like that. Really interesting to see. But Carcanos, the biggest problem with the Carcanos was the ammunition. American 6.5 and Italian 6.5 is not the same diameter, and that gave Carcanos such a bad name back in the day. It was crazy. I mean, I remember people saying Carcanos were just inaccurate garbage that wasn't worth your time and blah 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 blah. I don't know. CIA kept telling us it was good enough to kill Kennedy. Can't be that bad of a rifle, can it? Carcanos are really good rifles. A lot of people really, I mean, they're very lightweight, pretty accurate. The way they were setting them up, especially going into the Second World War, the sights on them were very battle intuitive. The one thing I've never understood, some of these really complex, good, but really complex battle sights. I'm sorry, you're not taking that much time on the battlefield to fiddle with your sights. It never clicks in my head why you would have so many adjustments, fiddles, knobs, this, that, and the Carcanos, if I remember correctly, they've got a little flip V sight. One of them was 100 yards, the other one was 300 yards on one of the models of the Carcano, and that one immediately was like, yep, there you go. That's what you need. Put it right where you need it, within battle range, quick and easy, and it's done. The 6.5 Carcano bullet was a very soft shooting rifle bullet. It wasn't a full powered monster rifle cartridge. In fact, I believe Ian on Forgotten Weapons said that of all the cartridges of the World Wars, that I believe he gave very good praise to the Carcano 6.5 for all around just being a really good package. And I don't believe they ever went to a Spitzer bullet with the 6.5 Carcano. I believe that was always a round nose bullet. So, yeah, I do not know a whole lot about Carcanos. That's another one. If one comes across my site, I may try to snatch it up because even Othias and May on Sea and Arsenal, I believe they gave the Carcano very, very high praise. They did a video, top 10 military rifles of World War One, and I'll be darned, I believe the Carcano, if it wasn't number one, it was very, very high ranking. Top two, top, I don't even think it was top three. Top one or top two uh, was the Carcano, simply because it was a very easy rifle to handle, very easy to pack around, very easy to shoot. Really just an all around great little rifle. So yeah, the Carcanos, where did the Carcanos come from that were just imported? Did they actually come from Italy, or were they given out as military aid to another country? I do remember them coming in. I don't remember the specifics on it though. But yeah, there's a lot of Carcanos that just came in. Oh heck, there's another YouTuber that does milsurps and stuff, and he buys a lot of rifles from oh okay, I believe that. With the Ethiopian haul, Africa, yep. I'll believe that they did come in from Africa. Italy was all over Africa through the interwar years and such. But there's another YouTuber that gets milsurps from Royal Tiger Imports, and that's an interesting place. Man, some of those seem like really hit or miss, and I just the gamble on some of those makes me a little nervous. Not gonna lie. I really like to see the rifle. Like if it's beat up and maybe missing a couple of parts, it doesn't bother me, but I like to see it first. The pick of the litter rifles that may or may not be good or not. That's a gamble that still I don't know if I like making. So how many rifles would still be in Africa and what kinds? Africa may be the last land of milsurps. It may be, and I'll bet there's some really wild milsurps in Africa. Africa, man, throughout all the years, Africa, every continent has been on Africa. Weapons of all kinds have to be there. Just, I mean, there's got to be some really wild rifles still in Africa. Yes, there were plenty of wars in Africa. Yep. It's pretty brutal. Like evilly inhumane wars in Africa. Oh. probably some of the worst didn't even involve guns. Ugh. Reading stories, the Rwandan genocide, learning about that, my lord. Human beings can really be just absolutely terrible to other human beings. That is the lesson of the 20th century is very, very ugly. We human beings can just be terrible animals at some points. But yeah. So let's see. I cannot think offhand. I think Africa may be the last source of Milsurp rifles, and it may be. I mean, seeing some of the rifles that came back from Afghanistan was really interesting. Some of the rifles they were using in Afghanistan. I remember the one of the kings of Afghanistan, or I don't know if he was necessarily a king or emperor or whatever, had a military arsenal, and I think he was actually making under license Martini Henrys. But seeing some of the Martini Henrys that were coming out of Afghanistan was really wild. There were some really, really interesting guns that came out of Afghanistan. Yeah. Oh, another project that I was just popped in my head that I was thinking about making. Something that very, very few people, and I don't believe there's probably zero reference of anywhere except here in America where they were made. When America was making the P-14 for the British, and the Russians came knocking at our door to help them make Mosin Nagants. Remington, who was making Mosin Nagants and making P-14s, actually made a P-14 patterned rifle in 7.62 by 54R. They made okay, memory's not going to be totally perfect. I think they made like 5 of them for the Russian um, um, procurement, whatever. And they took them back and they loved them. They absolutely loved them. They came back and said, we want to trial the rifle. And they made something on the order of about 500 more ish, something. And shipped them back to Russia right before the fall of the Tsar. Somewhere in the world, there are 500 P-14 Enfields chambered in 7.62 by 54R. Now, I don't think there's going to be any secret that I enjoy shooting 54R, but one of the ideas that I had is, would it be interesting to remake a P-14 7.62 by 54R full military stock, full military regalia as it would have been delivered to the Russians? Um, would that be an interesting project? I think it would be, but I don't know. That's a story that I came across, and it was really, really an interesting thing that um, the most Nagant may have been replaced if the Tsar didn't meet the end that he did. I think that's an interesting rifle, and I think that would be something that, again, it wouldn't be historically, it wouldn't have any historic provenance, but a project like that would kind of keep the story alive. That somewhere in the world, there's like 500 P-14 Enfields and 7.62 by 54R. Where did they go? They've never been found. They've never been accounted for. They've never been nothing. I'll bet they're probably in some Soviet warehouse, some Russian warehouse, probably in a salt mine somewhere. I saw a video of a guy shooting one of those. I don't know if it was original. It was chambered in 54. That's interesting. I've never come across that. I'm gonna go look for that tonight. That's very interesting. See, I'm all about, keeping the history alive. Like, we can tell the history verbally, we can write the history down. I think it's way cooler to hold the history in your hands. Like, that is, to me, like, you can have a book with pictures, or here's the rifle. Like, to me, the living history is way cooler. I'm gonna have to look for that because that is really cool if someone actually did that. Like that, I give a lot of props to that because that's, it's not cheap and it's not easy. Like, I'm not a machinist. I'm not a gunsmith by trade. It's something. I work with gunsmiths. I work with really, really good gunsmiths. Um, I enjoy the heck out of all of it. I learn as much as I can. Um, yeah, that's an interesting thing, and that's something that popped into my head because that would be a project that, if you could pull it off really nice, I bet that's a heck of a deal. Like, that's, I don't know. To me, that stuff like that really, really drives me on a daily basis. So that, and seeing if I can build a PSL that does not do PSL things, because that is one of the biggest letdowns. So probably, good gosh, probably 15 years ago now, walked into a local pawn shop with a buddy of mine. Did not have a whole bunch of money to spend. Um, uh, Family man with kids. We all know how that goes. But like 15 years ago, walk into a pawn shop and there's a PSL sitting on the shelf. This is not a hack together PSL. This is on an original Romanian receiver, original Romanian, all numbers matching receiver and parts. This was imported as a PSL. And it had the bayonet lug. So this was a very early import. This was a very early, long before pre-ban. This was a really nice PSL, and it looked like it had been barely shot at all. And I told my buddy, real good friend of mine, I told him to jump on that. It was $800. I said, you're not going to get better than this. Had the original Romanian scope on it. To this day, I think he's still trying to figure out how to use that scope. But PSL is a great rifle. It is a great platform. Does it have shortcomings? Yes, a lot of them. The concept is fantastic. The execution was terrible. The PSL needs so many things to make it right. But what I endeavored on is basically, can we make a PSL actually function the way they wanted a PSL to function as? So I'm all in to see if I can make a PSL actually shoot and be accurate through a range of fire, through the Soviet sniper doctrine, which says, it's basically kind of not, it's very different from American sniper doctrine. Basically, Soviet snipers, there's a ton of them and they're everywhere. They're in the battalions, they're everywhere throughout the battalions. It's very, very different from what American doctrine for sniping is. But that works against the PSL because the more you fire the PSL, the more inaccurate it gets. So yeah, can we make a PSL that is actually accurate? And to me, If it's not accurate, it's not fun. I want the bragging rights. And that's it. If we go out to the range, I don't have to be number one. Like I'm not uber competitive and have to be number one. But it's for the bragging rights. You go out there and you try to do the best you can on the accuracy. So that's my whole deal with the PSL. Can I make a PSL do things that the PSL is very bad at doing, and that is accuracy. So my buddy bought the PSL, and sure enough, if you got the broadside of a barn, you're going to use it. That is a PSL right there. I mean, it is not uncommon, time and time again, to see 5 or 6 MOA out of a PSL. So basically, we're reworking a PSL. I've got a complete virgin parts kit, complete matching numbers, every number matches. I've got an original imported, for some reason, I don't understand this, Romania imported receivers and parts kits after the import ban and whatnot. I don't know why they imported the receivers though, because there were already American made receivers. But all that aside, I've got a Romanian receiver, I've got a virgin parts kit, and we're going to try to make the PSL do awesome things. Not PSL things, awesome things. We're going to try to make this thing really stand out. So that's what we're shooting for with the PSL. Gunsmith, he's going to turn me a barrel. He says that's like his least favorite thing in the world to do. So I basically just told him, I said, look, talked to him like 2 weeks ago. I said, look, we're like halfway through summer. It's gonna be tough. Work on it when you can. If you've got downtime and a desire, but don't put it ahead of anybody else. Don't do that. So realistically, the PSL probably won't hit the range till next year. Kind of a bummer, but it is what it is. But I'm a fan of 54R. That's when I started shooting. It was cheap. Rifles were cheap. Ammo was cheap. It's a lot of fun, and it's a ass kicking round. It'll take down animals. Like, it is a good round, and I am just disappointed with how much hate the Mosin and the 54R round gets everywhere. So it's always been kind of my thing to just make the 54R do really amazing things. And doing it in a semi-automatic platform is going to be pretty awesome too. I did have at one point, I used to collect and trade like mad, and I had at one point 3 SVTs, and I'm not going to stop kicking myself over that because I never should have sold them. They are really fantastic rivals, but back in the day, it was kind of trading up and getting better, and man, that was really stupid letting go 3 SVT 40s. But SVT 40s are also not accurate. They suffer really badly from barrel whip and all that, but they run like a sewing machine. They never miss a beat. They were so good. I liked them a lot, but is what it is. If I would have known the future that I'd have to spend $3,000 or $4,000 replacing an SVT 40, probably would have held on to them. But man, the gun world, it's wild, isn't it? So, well, I guess these are my thoughts, guys. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks, James, for hitting up all the comment. Like, that was great. Redneck Preppy, always hitting your videos, man. I hope you have a freaking great time. Y'all have a great night, and I'm gonna sign off, and I'll catch you guys on another video. Um, I'm working like mad. Summertime in the beer industry is crazy. So I'm trying to do little things. I'm really trying to focus on getting to the range instead of bench working right now because I mean wintertime's coming and wintertime is great for bench working out in my shop. I can get a lot of stuff done in the wintertime when it comes to building rifles and stuff like that. Summertime, wintertime, I can't get up to the range. It's deep in the mountains. It gets snow drifts. My little pathetic truck does not do truck things in the snow. So, um, range time in the winter is not a great option. So I'm going to focus on getting to the range and getting more videos of range time and having fun like that and um, bench stuff and kids going back to school soon. Oh my lord. Between kids and working and no BS, my work is like 70 to 80 hours a week. So getting a couple hours to sit down and chat with you guys online is oh my lord, it's wild. Work is crazy. The beer industry is like out of control this summer. It is unreal. So thanks guys for watching and I will catch you again soon. Bye.